Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, May 14th, 2014. Can we have a roll call? See who's here?
Sure. Chair Dawson,
Here.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Here.
Commissioner Brassfield, Commissioner Fletcher. I'll go ahead and mark Commissioner Fletcher absent. Commissioner Freeman. I'll go ahead and mark Commissioner Freeman absent. Commissioner Latassa
Present.
and Commissioner Silva.
Here.
And if you'd like, I can go ahead and announce the staff members present. We have our planning manager, Levi Hill, Senior Associate Planner, Chris Schmidt, Senior Associate Planner, Christy Sabdo, and myself, Recording Secretary Barrera.
How do people participate?
Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it's their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you're connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government.
Are we ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Okay. First of all, the consent agenda. Is there anyone here that would like to pull something from the consent agenda or comment on the consent agenda? No. How about out in the peanut gallery? No? No one.
There are 3 attendees online. However, there are no hands raised.
Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda via April 9th, 2024 minutes.
Second.
Can we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield, Commissioner Fletcher's absent, Commissioner Freeman's absent, Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
and Commissioner Silva.
Yes.
Okay, the minutes have been approved.
Okay. General public comments. The public may speak to any item that is not on the agenda and that is in the city of Monterey subject matter jurisdiction. And we have an open floor right now. Anyone? No.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you. So let's go on to public hearings. Number 3, recommend to the city council that the 5-year capital improvement program, CIP program for fiscal year 24-25 is consistent with the general plan, area plans, master plans, specific plans, coastal plans, traffic calming plans, and Move Monterey multimodal plan. Not a project. Okay, so can we have a staff report on this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Dawson. My name is Christy Sabdo, Senior Associate Planner with the City of Monterey. I'll be presenting the 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal year 2024-25. The recommendation is that the capital improvement program is consistent with the City of Monterey's plans. So this year, instead of preparing a 1-year capital improvement program, the Public Works has provided a 5-year CIP program that includes 105 CIP projects. And all of those projects are listed under Exhibit A. City staff has prepared a consistency analysis with all of the plans. The Planning Commission is responsible tonight for determining consistency with these plans. That is the main vote tonight. We do have Andrea Rennie and Andrew Easterling here to answer any questions after my presentation. We also have Megan Beckman online. So the 5-year CIP program was reviewed for consistency with the general plan, area and specific plans, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the Move Monterey Multimodal Plan, coastal plans, and the traffic calming plans. And staff has found them to be consistent with all of those plans as shown on Exhibit A that specifies the certain goal, program, or policy that it's consistent with. So there are 105 CIP projects total. Staff also determined whether it was a project under CEQA, whether it was exempt from CEQA, whether further review is required before the CEQA determination is made, or if there is a final ISMND that's already been approved. So we found that 32 projects are not a project under CEQA. There are 59 projects that were exempt under CEQA. There are 11 projects that further review is going to be required. For example, there may be potential archaeological impacts. So that needs to be determined before we can make a determination. And then there are 3 projects where a final ISMND has already been approved. So there are 3 CEQA exemptions were found when reviewing the 5-year program. And example is existing facilities. That is one of the exemptions. Examples of projects that fell under this exemption include equipment replacement, ADA improvements, replacement of trash receptacles, Monterey Sports Center repair and upgrades, and sign replacement. And then under replacement and reconstruction exemption, we have waterfront parking lot upgrades. And then under information collection, there are a number of projects that fell under that category. So that means the Public Works needs to collect more information to further refine a project or determine the exact scope of work. So they need to really kind of refine the project and determine what the actual project is. There are 22 projects that require further review under CEQA. And here are some examples here. The conference center renovation, median upgrades, marina structural repairs and replacement, library terrace repair, etc. And then there are 3 CIP projects that have had ISMNDs approved under them already. The Wharf 2 critical repairs and parking area, the Del Monte Avenue groundwater remediation, and the CAL FIRE Green Belt fuel reduction grant. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council that the 5-year CIP program for fiscal year 2024-25 is consistent with the general plan, area plan, specific plans, master plans, coastal plans, traffic calming plans, and the Move Monterey multimodal plan. I can address any questions regarding consistency and CEQA, and Public Works is available if you have any questions on the particular CIP projects.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone has a question for staff? Or staff, extended staff? No? Mike?
For the extended staff. Question is, City of Monterey seems to be getting behind, continually behind in projects. I don't know if we can,
Oh, do you have your speaker?
I don't know, can we sustain the projects? I know we're short of engineers.
Good afternoon, Chair Dawson, Commissioners. My name is Andrea Rennie, Public Works Director. And so the 105 projects that you see, a lot of them are actually existing. What we're doing is we're getting all of the projects that we have, and we're creating a 5-year CIP program. And we're also going to have a 5-year CIP program book where all the projects are going to have information on location, need, purpose, and the status of the project. So not all the 105 projects are new projects. We're looking at addressing critical infrastructure needs like the wharves and things that do need care, city facilities, ADA improvements. So the 105 can be misleading. That's just the total number of projects. They're not 105 new projects.
Does that mean that we can sustain on an annual basis and maintain to finish these projects?
I think that's a concerted effort of all of us to try and create programs that are going to address the infrastructure. So we're going to use consultants. And what we've been trying to do is, and I'm going to use a simple example, instead of saving money for the deck and saving money for the roof and saving money for the kitchen remodel, we're trying to put the funds where we can get more bang for our buck right now and things that we can get done. And we're trying to do a more phased approach. So we're looking at the next 5 years, trying to see what are our most critical needs. And we're trying to obviously recruit for more engineers and project managers and also use consultants.
So I think I understand that by planning for 5 years, we can get ahead of the planning process instead of trying to do it annually.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Andrew.
We have a plan forward. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I have a question for Christie.
Sure.
My understanding is that the city of Monterey has not yet finally adopted a LCP. And yet there's a reference that there's consistency with the coastal plan.
We have land use plans. We have like 4 or 5 land use plans that have been adopted, but we don't have like a comprehensive LCP.
So
Yeah.
this is just for the land use
Yes,
portion of it?
yes.
Okay.
No más? No? How about from the audience? Does anyone out there have a comment or a question?
There are
Any hand-
several attendees online,
hands up?
however, there are no hands raised.
No hand raised? All right. So comments? We're through questions already. No.
I'll make a motion. We accept the recommendation of staff. I'll second.
Second by,
It seems like a very thorough list and, it's good to see them keeping stuff up.
And I think that, if we having a hard time and on an annual basis, meeting a lot of projects, being able to plan it out and to extend, we have to try it. We got to try something to maintain the inertia,
Yeah.
maintain the city.
tough to turn that boat. Okay, so
So we have a motion and a second. We can go ahead and get a vote.
we have a motion and a second. No other questions, no other comments about the motion? Okay, so can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa,
Yeah.
and Commissioner Silva.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with a vote of 5.
Thank you. Okay, consider 601 Lighthouse Avenue condominium subdivision application SD 230042 and use amendment for 5 residential condominium units, 1 commercial condominium unit in common areas. Applicant Ethan Hare.
Yeah, and while Chris is pulling the presentation up, I'll just note that Commissioner Silva did let me know earlier that he'll be recusing himself from this item. So that explains his exodus right then.
I'm not hearing that very well.
Yeah, Commissioner Silva recused himself from this item.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, thank you, Planning Manager Hill and Chair Dawson. My name is Chris Schmidt. I'm a Senior Associate Planner for the City of Monterey. I've been working with the applicants on all of the entitlements for this project. And so today we're looking at, as the Chair mentioned, a use permit amendment and condominium subdivision application, which would include 5 residential units, 1 commercial unit, and common area, all condominium units, of course. So the staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving the use permit amendment and subdivision application with conditions of approval. Just some background information about the site. It is located at the corner of Lighthouse Avenue and Hoffman Avenue in the New Monterey area of Monterey. It does have a zoning of PCLH, which means the Lighthouse specific plan is the land use document for this site. This is a project that the Planning Commission has seen in the past, and as I mentioned here in the background information, the Planning Commission approved a use permit on October 25th, 2022. The use permit was requested in the context of this project was requested to exceed the density of 30 units per acre, which would allow them to increase from 4 to 5 units at the site. The specific plan, of course, allows that use permit policy. And then in November, actually it was November 16, 2022, not 2023, the ARC approved preliminary architectural review where they look at generally the massing, the site, usually the siding of the building, this was an existing structure, and the massing of the building. And then in on December 6, 2023, the ARC approved final architectural review. So the project did receive a building permit and is currently under construction. The applicant did receive their building permit and in anticipation of doing a condominium conversion, in this case, a condominium project, which the difference there is because the units are separate, separately owned, there are additional building code and state law requirements. So what is the project? The condo map would create 5 residential condominium units, 1 commercial condominium unit, as well as common area. And in that common area, there's roof deck, parking, storage, a waste enclosure, mechanical and electrical equipment, an elevator, et cetera, other things. And so here I just have the condo map plan. So I'll quickly go through it. This is the first floor. If you recall the scope of this project, the applicant was taking this primarily commercial building, turning the Lighthouse Avenue fronting portion of the building into a small commercial unit, and then the remainder would be a common area, as I mentioned, the uses as I mentioned, that would be used by the residents. And so these are the configurations of the condo map residential portion. This is the 2nd floor, 3rd floor, and then the roof is entirely common area. So findings for approval for the subdivision, there are 6 findings that are required for approval here. Staff was able to make this finding, and they're certainly more detailed in the staff report, but the finding is that the first finding is that the project is consistent with the general plan and specific plan, the Lighthouse specific plan in this case. The second finding is that the site has to be suitable for the proposed type and building type, residential mixed use in this case, and density. It is the third finding is that the project is not likely to cause substantial environmental damage or injury to fish or wildlife or other habitat. The fourth finding is that the project would not conflict with easements required by the public. There are none, and no conflicts here. And then the last finding is that the project is consistent with the MAP Act, the City Code, chapters 33 having to do with subdivisions, and then chapter 38, the zoning ordinance. And then moving on to the findings of approval for the use permit. Again, the Planning Commission made these findings when the use permit was originally approved in 2022 for a multifamily mixed use project. And there's really no change here, but the project is consistent with the zoning ordinance and Lighthouse specific plan. The use would be consistent with the general plan and will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of residents or the workforce in the area. And then the use will comply with the conditions required for the condo map. And then there is a fourth finding for condominiums is that the project proponents can carry out the project, financially carry out the project, and they've demonstrated that it's currently under construction now. The staff did receive 3 public comments regarding the proposed height, as well as impacts associated with the roof deck usage, any sort of furniture, umbrellas or heaters that would be put up there, as well as lighting that would go up there. And here are a couple of photos that were sent by one of the residents of the condominiums that are located just up the street here. And just the response here is that the project does meet the height limit. There was a question of the height limit here. The elevator penthouse is exempt from the height limit per the city code. The project was approved by the ARC. As I mentioned, it went to the ARC twice. Story poles were required for both of those appearances at the ARC hearing. And no unreasonable privacy, view, or living environment impacts were identified. And then to address some of the other concerns from the neighbors, the ARC did require additional conditions. That furniture or other items at the roof deck shall not exceed the height of the deck railings. And then rail mounted lights, which was the type of light that was selected for the roof, basically inset within the railings of the roof deck, would be directed down and inwards towards the rooftop deck to mitigate any sort of glare or view from offsite. So with that, the staff recommendation is to approve the project. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Yes,
So Chris, just to make it clear for the people who wrote the letters and maybe people in the audience, what we have before us today and what we're going to be voting on is specifically for the subdivision for the condominium. So we're not really able to take into account any other issues other than that specific task that is on the agenda. Is that correct?
That's right. The use permit that was approved by the planning commission and the architectural review permit, which was approved as well by the ARC, those were approved months or years ago. The appeal periods for those projects have since lapsed. So yes, the purview here is just on the subdivision map.
Thank you.
I remember seeing this project at least twice. I think once with the ARC and once with the planning commission. And not changed a lot. Exactly how many condos, residential condos are we adding here?
5.
5? And the one commercial down front,
Right.
right? Okay. Any other comments? Mike?
On the issue of views, there's an old expression that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. I think it's coming to views as well. It becomes more contested as time goes on because as we build up, we're taking away more views. And so it is causing problems. Chris, when you go through these projects, how much effort do you try to mitigate percentages of view loss?
The city doesn't look at it on a percentage basis. I think what some of the city's view sharing policies say is there needs to be a shared view amongst existing building owners and proposed either developers or applicants. And so there's no exact formula. If a project comes in and it is completely blocking a neighbor's view, we will advise that applicant to really revise the project. It just depends on a project by project basis. We do think about precedents set by the ARC. We look at the development pattern of our neighborhoods, of our downtown district, various districts, and go by what's been done in the past.
So, and I noted in the materials that one of the very specific items on the view was lighting at night. And I now saw where the ARC wants to keep them at a low level, but this is not an issue for the people downhill. It's an issue for the people uphill. Could they put special attention on the furthest edge so that no light is going up? We do an additional finding on that?
So I'll speak to that for just a moment. As Chris pointed out earlier, the purview of the commission tonight is solely on the condo map. So the design of the building, building permits have been issued. So that design and the specifics of the actual building are vested at this point. City has approved, the ARC approved the architectural review permit. Subsequently, the city's issued building permit. So the only thing that findings can be made on tonight are the use permit amendment that's before you, and that's solely for the condo map as well.
But that's what I'm asking though, is that we're talking about findings on the use permit.
Well, the
Because if
use
it's-
permit amendment, the scope of the use permit amendment is solely to allow for the condo map, which is a requirement of the municipal code. So it doesn't open up the entire use permit for additional conditions beyond what's already been placed on the building.
Okay, that's why I asked for a findings lesson plan. Because I know that in the past, we've asked to mitigate issues and they passed. So I understand.
Yeah, at the previous hearings, as Chris had showed, the previous hearings when this was up for use permit, and I believe it's 2022, and then also when it went to architectural review in 2023, those would have been appropriate times for conditions, and conditions were applied to the project to mitigate those concerns at that time. But that, yeah, as Chris noted, that time has passed at this point, and now it's just the condo map before this commission.
Yeah, and I'll also note that the ARC took specific notice of of this lighting. This type of lighting is really inset into the railing and should have some sort of lip around it. So the light really should be directionally sensitive and not gonna go.
That's specifically what I was talking about, so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Any other questions for
Yeah,
staff?
thanks, Chris. So can you put up the condo plan, the roof, for the roof?
Roof.
So that's, there are four, it's a big rectangle, and the four sides are basically the property dimensions. But what I don't missing from here is I don't see the actual roof. I see the property lines within a big blank space in the middle. I don't, for a roof, you would expect to see some configuration, because I don't think that's the configuration of the roof. If you go to the floor below, you'll see.
so
there-
this is the roof. Basically the dimensions of the roof. The actual roof deck itself is much smaller than this here. This is essentially the condominium map is effectively allowing the condominium association to say that these common areas are the responsibility of the members of the association to maintain. So
Right.
that's why it shows the entire roof.
But is that, because when you look at that top dimension, I can't read it here, it's 119 point something feet.
Yeah, 119.92.
Okay, so now go to the site plan.
So yeah, and I don't have a site plan here. This is
Well, I
this is
guess
the
the top-
condominium plan.
How about the top floor plan? You can see there that the property dimension is 119 point something feet.
Right.
So, see that 119 point something feet?
92?
Yeah, see how that goes, what, 13 point, or there's some dimension between the edge, what appears to be the edge of the building and the property line. You see what I'm after, is that the roof plan doesn't seem to show the roof, it shows just the property. And I'm wondering if that roof plan part of the condo map is considered accurate, or am I missing something?
The building is built 2 lot lines.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So really, the roof does cover the entire property.
right.
Okay. Okay, well, that's all for that then. I don't know, it's like, so it's just the whole rectangle of the property right to the 4 property lines is covered with roof.
Yeah, so the extent of the building's walls go to the property line.
Okay,
And so,
okay,
and it's a kind of a big box of a building. and-
okay. So then, just to beat this dead horse, then, the roof access and the guardrails and the actual use of the roof deck has already been approved.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks, that's all I have.
Yeah.
Bob, no? Yes?
Yeah, I remember this coming up when I was on the ERC and it was dealt with. So I mean, it's water under the bridge. And I think what we're dealing with here is a specific task for the city to deal with the subdivision into condominiums as opposed to the original designation. So I mean, I think I'm with Mike on how to, in the future, deal with view requirements, and I've talked to staff about it as well. I think it would be good if the city had a mechanism of coming up with something that's a little bit more detailed, possibly quantitative, but that all implies that you need to have money and resources going to that type of a project. I mean, it can be that you have a LiDAR map of the city, and with software, you can work out quantitative view impacts. And I think as time goes on, that might be worth, looking into, because it will make it simpler for everybody. But I don't think that's right now an issue that we can address for this particular project.
Can we go out to the audience if there's an owner here?
Can we ask questions or just make statements?
So this is the point in the meeting for public comment on this item. So you can make comments to the commission, and then the commission, if they want to relay those questions to staff, they can choose to do so.
I see some clarification. Is this
You would have 3 minutes to speak to the commission. Now is that moment.
We have a lovely podium.
Please
right
come to the
over here.
podium.
People who's a block up the hill will be viewing everything that goes on that roof
Gotcha.
from now on.
Hopefully they stay dressed.
Well, but on the other hand, that in itself could be exciting. But as he mentioned, the outline of the roof is the entire property line. Now, if there's, are they going to be able to go up there and occupy right up next to the edge and set their drinks on the countertop and put up lounge chairs and umbrellas anywhere on that roof?
So again, this is a point in the meeting you can voice those concerns to
Okay,
the
but
commission,
I won't get an answer to that. here,
not
though.
directly from staff at this point in time. That's correct.
Okay.
We'll try to address it.
Okay, please do, because that was my concern. If people, if you go further down Lighthouse Avenue, they built some new buildings down there. I've been here since 2017. And the specific plan was done in 2016. So the new buildings that are done by Reside, where Reside crosses Lighthouse, you go a block either direction. The new buildings that have come in have been done consistent with the specific plan. There's under 35 feet. There's a third story up there, and the third story is recessed, so they can have a balcony and they can't, drop stuff, and they're not overhanging the sidewalk and this and that. One of my concerns about an area as big as this one, this is as big as that theater was. You could have a massive party up there, and why wouldn't they if they're allowed to? I was kind of hoping that there'd be some offset from the rail there for the occupiable portion of the roof deck would prevent people from getting uncomfortably close to that rail and doing goodness knows what. And then, of course, where the lights would be, I'm having a hard time visualizing how high that rail is relative to the surface they'd be walking on. Is it knee high or is it waist high? Or again, if there's nothing to prevent people from, did I go overboard? How many seconds? Okay. If there's nothing to prevent people from getting a little relaxed when they've had a few relaxing adult beverages and they're doing what the deck is supposed to be used for, which is socializing and partying and so on and so forth, falling over the edge could be a concern. Anyway, I guess I won't get any of those answers here. So who should I turn to for such answers, or is it even?
The commission's received your comment, and if they've received your comment, so if they choose to relay those questions to staff for a response, they'll do so.
How will I get the answer?
If you stay in attendance, you would hear the answer.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Any more questions, comments from the audience? No.
There are 4 attendees online. However, I do not see any hands raised, but I can go ahead and remind the public how to participate. Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. And today's PC webinar ID is 161-990-8039. And there are still no hands raised.
No hands raised? All right. Comments from the peanut gallery.
Well, it
Can we
seemed that.
just formally close the public hearing? Just close the public hearing.
Closed.
Mr. Chair, it seems like this is just a straightforward condo approval. It's a condo map approval. We aren't really reviewing or approving the ARC approvals from before regarding this deck. I believe this item is appealable, but I'm not sure if the city council would review it in any other way that we are.
No.
The staff has done a thorough review of the condo map documents.
Well, it turns out we have the skill set over here.
Yeah, but my point is that it appears that I looked through the condo map documents. They all seem to be in order, and the staff has reviewed them. So I don't see any reason that this project doesn't meet the requirements of our condo map approval.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Any more comments? How about a motion?
Actually, if you don't mind, I can make a comment first.
Okay.
Sir, we are a service of the public. As I recall, Terry asked the question about the roof. I think if we had had that illustration, it might have answered some of the gentleman's questions. Because I recall there were some setbacks from the barrier on some sides. And I think that's when safety is an issue, I think we need to address it. So I would say that there is setbacks, as I recall, on those illustrations. And I'm sure if there's any differentiation, Chris can answer otherwise. But
Yeah, and if you'd like for staff to elaborate on that further, Chris can do so.
because if you would address the safety issue.
Yeah, so the railings for the deck are set back from both sides of the building. So the Hoffman Avenue side and then the adjacent property side by 12 feet. And so just for context, the site itself, the building is 50 feet wide. So approximately half of the roof deck in terms of that width would be half of the roof, I mean, in terms of width would be roof deck in the center. So it's not all the way to the edge of the building. The front of it is set back more than 12 feet. I didn't measure that, but
When we have another Mardi Gras, it'll be important.
Well, I guess that goes back to my original question about that roof.
Yeah.
The roof plan of the condo plan of the roof. That's just the property dimensions. That doesn't actually show the roof evidently is set in. But there's no, that doesn't need to be discussed. I just think there might be some confusion about a roof plan as part of condo documents that you aren't showing the roof, you're just showing the property lines.
Right. And so the condo plan is to illustrate ownership, right? So that's what's happening here. The roof, as Chris pointed out, that roof area is going to be under the responsibility, not of a single unit of the condo building, but of the entire, it's common area shared by all owners within the condo building. So that's why it's illustrated that way. It's simply illustrating that portion, while not accessible as common area to all occupants of the building, does fall under the maintenance and ownership of all occupants of the building.
And the use. And that's why I asked, with Terry's question about the roof, it's in common use. And that's with the limitations of the barriers. So that's why I agree with Terry. It would have been helpful just because it is in common use. Thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like the whole thing is the roof. Part of it's deck and part of it is roof, and it doesn't really matter. It's all common anyway.
Well, it all came up in the staff presentation in front of ARC. I mean, the setbacks, the lighting, all those issues that we've discussed already were addressed and were in detail by city staff during that presentation a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So I think again, what
Yeah, it's already been through us as well. So.
yeah, and so I think what Levi's is saying is that we've got an administrative action that we're trying to take here, and I think we just need to address that on its own.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. So, and just before I do, just for the gentleman who came in and spoke, it seems like, he could go and look at the plans that Chris would have in the file to satisfy himself. It sounds like there's some substantial setbacks from the actual edge of the structure to where the deck itself is, because it seems like the safety issue was one of his primary concerns. So there are documents in the city file that might help him there. So I'll make a motion to approve this condominium subdivision application for 601 Lighthouse. And that's for 5 residential condominium units. And that's my motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for Bob.
Sure.
Okay,
Chair
go ahead.
Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
and Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries with a vote of 4. The decision is appealable within 10 days to the city council. We have applications online or in our planning office.
You want to wake up Peter?
Yes. So I'm recusing myself from the next item, and I'll go get Peter.
Was it something I said? Did he leave? Welcome back, Sailor. Okay, moving right along. Number 5, approve the vacation of a portion of Manzanita Street considered consistent with the City of Monterey general plan. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yes, as Chair Dawson just mentioned, the item before you is a request to vacate a portion of Manzanita Street. Just to give a little bit of additional information procedurally, this is the first step of a kind of a multi-step process that will ultimately require this request to go to council for final decision. So what the commission is being asked to do tonight specifically, and as it relates to this request, is to determine whether or not the request to vacate the right of way is consistent with the general plan. And staff's recommendation is to adopt a resolution determining that the proposed vacation, and forgive me, there's a typo on this. It mentions Church Street, but it's actually Manzanita Street, consistent with the City of Monterey's general plan. So just some background here. So Manzanita Street is an existing right-of-way. It stretches, it's between Jefferson Street and Madison Street. However, the subject portion that's been requested to be vacated is specifically between Johnson Street and Madison Street and is currently unbuilt right-of-way, meaning there is no street there today. And is classified as a local street in the city's circulation element of the general plan. So the property owner at 899 Johnson Street submitted a request that the City of Monterey vacate the portion of the unbuilt right-of-way of Manzanita Street that's adjacent to the property, her property, and it's shown in more detail on the illustration here. And the request is specifically to vacate to the depth of her lot. So that's where you're seeing that shaded purple color illustrating the actual area to be covered under the vacation. So there's a few different laws or regulations that touch on why this request would end up before the Planning Commission today. And one's Government Code 65402, which states that no street shall be vacated or abandoned until the location, purpose, and extent of such acquisition or disposition, such as street vacation or abandonment, or such public building or structure have been submitted to and reported upon by the planning agency, that's this commission, as to conformity with said adopted general plan or part thereof. And while a little bit duplicative, the Streets and Highways Code 8313 also states that if the proposed vacation of a street or highway or public service easement is within an area for which a general plan is adopted by a local agency, the legislative body of the public entity shall consider the general plan prior to vacating the street, highway, or public service easement. So once again, before both these codes essentially say that in a city where there has been an adopted general plan, the legislative body who adopts that plan, the Planning Commission, shall make a recommendation on any proposed vacations or abandonments. So as previously noted, the City of Monterey General Plan Map 5, which shows our street classifications, identifies Manzanita Street as a local street, and that's kind of shown in this illustration. This is a snapshot of that plan out of the general plan. So what you see there in purple and green are our arterials and our collector street classifications. So everything else that's shown in the white or gray is going to be considered a local street. Staff also found that the proposed vacation is consistent with the City of Monterey's general plan because the subject portion of the street is currently unbuilt and unused and is infeasible for future construction as determined by the city's Public Works Department. Additionally, the remaining built portion of Manzanita Street between Jefferson and Johnson Street will continue to function as a local street. And staff's recommendation is to adopt a resolution determining that the proposed vacation of a portion of Manzanita, again, apologies for the typographical error, is consistent with the city of Monterey's general plan. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Levi, I have a question. Are there any documented underground utilities on this site?
It's a good question. I didn't receive any confirmation in working with the Public Works Department that there was any existing utilities in this right of way. Again, I would assume not due to the topographical constraints of the site, but we can certainly verify that before anything moves forward. And it would obviously be placed in an easement before anything was formally vacated.
Public Works should have maps showing sewer and water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can
I also
elaborate a little
remember
bit.
This, we had an application come before us a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it was a deck next door. And this idea came up during that hearing, I believe.
I do recall that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Well, Levi, I think this might have been a question I should have asked earlier, but I think I'm within 500 feet of that. So should I just abstain from voting or should I just head out?
So it's a recommendation rather than an official action. So I think it's probably okay. But again, we as we've discussed previously with these, if you feel like you're unable to make an impartial judgment or decision on it, then you should abstain or recuse. But
Of course, if he was to leave, we'd have no quorum.
that's correct.
Yeah, the impression I had is it didn't fall underneath the Brown Act requirement when I was reading it, but
And we haven't actually made a formal measurement of whether or not you're within 500 feet.
I think I am.
What's your gut say?
My gut says I am. I don't want to,
You want to pause for just a second? I can probably figure it out.
Is he sending off a quick note to the city?
I think he's using his
Attorney?
software tool.
And is this going to be a 500-foot rule or 1,000?
Good question.
Bob, did you recuse yourself for the application for the deck remodel?
I don't remember it, so I must have for that. Well, this was more of an administrative thing that may not apply. but-
Yeah. Levi, would it be smart to take a 5-minute break here?
There you go.
Sure, we could do that. If you want to recess for five minutes.
Okay. A 5-minute Monterey break. Where's, oh, Terry. Let's secure from general quarters. Okay, so,
Sure, I
What-
can weigh in,
what's the
Chair.
story, sir?
Yeah, so we were able to verify the distance from Commissioner Bluth's property, and he is outside of the 500-foot conflict of interest radius. So he is okay to take action on this item.
I have another question.
yes, sir.
What would the zoning eventually be for this?
Sure. So if the vacation is ultimately approved at council, the zoning would it would take on the zoning of the adjacent properties, which would be a R1 zoning.
Would this be potentially added to the housing element as an opportunity site?
It's unlikely that it would be added as an opportunity site, given the constraints and the size of the property. Most likely what typically would happen, it does have to go through a specific surplus process. Once it's vacated as right of way, it's fee-owned property by the city. And then once completed that process, typically it would be appraised and then offered for sale to each of the adjacent property owners.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. More comments? Yes,
I
sir.
just want to clarify, that property is now city property right away?
It is currently right of way, correct?
Is it, but whose property?
The city's right of way.
Okay, so it would maintain it, and in some places, they get rid of those kind of surplus spaces by typically assimilation with the people that live around it. So we're not talking about that at this point.
Not at this point. So that comes later, and that option is definitely an option to happen down the road. But at this point, you're just determining consistency with the general plan with the vacation.
All right.
Thank you.
Or anyone from the audience like to comment on this item? No. Any with a hand raised?
There's a hand raised online. I can go ahead and allow person with the telephone number 902 to speak. They've been asked to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
They were unmuted for a second.
Yes, this is Nina Beatty. I wanted to make comments on this. The staff report was not adequate, and it didn't inform the public about what happens upon vacation of zoning or land use. It doesn't even define vacation. It didn't explain what happens after vacation, and only mentions a change of ownership in relation to CEQA without any explanation. The process of disposition was not reported on. And in Government Code 65402, it said no real property shall be disposed of or no street shall be vacated until the location, purpose, and extent of such street vacation has been submitted to and reported upon by the planning agency. So I would argue that the extent of this has not been provided to you or to us. So I asked the planning manager about the designation the land will have. Will it be zoned as open space, or will the vacation give the land to adjacent owners? And he said, as you heard tonight, but not in the report, it will be zoned as R16. Does the city own the property? Could the city sell the property? I asked. The city would be reallocated to the adjacent properties, so the city would no longer retain ownership. He said, how would the reallocation be done? These are all issues that should have been in the report. If vacated, the property is appraised and offered to each adjacent owner. Since this important information was not available to the public, I argue that this should be re-agendized so that the public can see this information in black and white. And I would ask, how do adjacent property owners have any different rights than any other person in the city to obtain city land? Also, the city council heard substantial public comment last week on the Dutra Street history and misappropriation of land from the Esalen, Ohlone, Rumson people who live there. Any vacated land in the city should revert to ancestral residents. At the very, very, very least, it should be offered to them first for sale, and then it should be offered in general to the public. That's the only fair thing to do. This isn't just land that can be appraised by somebody and then offered to the people that that are right adjacent to it. I oppose this vacation until the public can learn the whole extent of what's involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Now that the oxygen has been pumped out of the room,
There are no other hands raised online.
there's more people?
There are no other hands
No.
raised online.
Okay, thank you.
Close.
Yeah, if we can close the public hearing,
Yeah,
please.
we'll close the public hearing and
Thank
bring
you.
it back for comments and a motion over here.
I have a quick comment just in response to what we just heard. My understanding, Levi, is that this is really a multi-step process, and what we're discussing tonight is simply the vacation, but not the subsequent acquisition. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Again, just determining consistency with the general plan. There will be a notice public hearing at council. They'll set the public hearing at a council meeting, and it will be noticed for, I believe it's 20 days prior to the
Sure.
actual hearing.
Okay.
Correct.
So there's plenty of time and
There's-
action.
There's going to be more
taken
public
beforehand.
input on this. This is not the final word.
Right.
Yeah, well, I
Yes,
think,
Mr.
from what I understand, it's just the initiation of the process, so.
Yeah.
Anything else that would follow based on the question would happen in the other agendized items that would occur later.
Mike,
I make a recommendation. I make a motion that we get the recommendation to the council to move it on staff recommendations.
I'll second that.
second from Peter. Can we have a roll call, please? Or is there any comments? I'll make comments on the motion. No? Okay,
Chair Dawson,
yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes,
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes,
Commissioner Latassa has recused himself, and Commissioner Silva.
Yes.
Okay,
Want to go get
that
Terry?
motion carries with a vote of 4.
thank you for coming.
It's Jerry.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello, Jerry. Going to announce this, just a minute, would you? Item number 6, consider 620 Divisadero Street, use permit UP 240020 to allow modifications to an existing wireless facility on an existing monopine structure. It's a 6409A eligible facilities request. Applicant Jason Krebelitz, Crown Castle USA Inc., on behalf of Dish Wireless. So Jerry, can we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you. Jerry Goldman, contract planner. As stated, this is a use permit for a new Dish Wireless facility on an existing monopine at 620 Divisadero Street. Here's the project location. The project site is near some water tanks on public property. We have Jesse Street in this location, Divisadero Street here. You can access the site from both locations, and here's Stewart Avenue in this direction. So the ownership is the California American Water Company of the site. The applicant is represented by Daniel Pierce and Jason Krelevitz of Crown Castle. And the wireless carrier for this one will be Dish Wireless LLC. This is in the R1 residential zone. It's also in the general plan designated residential area. And as you'll see as I go through the presentation, this is an existing facility. They will be removing some existing antennas at the 32-foot elevation on the monopine structure. So that's a kind of like a pole with faux foliage on it. They are proposing to install 3 new panel antennas and mounts, 6 new remote radio units. There will be the installation of a new 5 by 7 foot concrete pad adjacent to the monopole, and they'll have some new fiber cable going through that and out to Jesse Street, 2 new cabinets, and they'll install other related support equipment, such as conduit. So this proposal, because of the excavation of a fiber line, we're calling it a new proposal, but it is going on to an existing facility and won't be expanded. So they want to improve the Dish Wireless's 5G service in Monterey through this facility. And again, the project includes excavation of a new 160-foot trench from the monopine, which is considered a substantial change per the FCC definition. So it would be, in our opinion, a 150-day shot clock. So here's a high-level view of the facility. Again, Visadero Street, Stewart Avenue, Jesse Street. The monopine is located right here. The new equipment area will be there. And then this is just a fiber line that'll go out to Jesse Street with a new vault in this location. Here's more of a close-up of the monopine right here that's again existing, and the 5 by 7 foot new equipment area. So I'll just be putting 2 new cabinets on here. They're pretty, this will be at ground level. And 2 new cabinets in that new equipment area. Here's a view of the antenna and remote radio layout. So existing monopine, 1, 2, 3 sectors of antennas with some support equipment behind it. This view isn't showing it, but there is existing foliage that comes out from the monopine, and that will, as you'll see, hide the antennas. Elevation view. So this is where the dish antennas will go. There are already some antennas at this level. They'll be replacing some other antennas that were there previously. It might have been Sprint, T-Mobile. We're not sure who the carrier was of that. And here's the new equipment down at ground level next to the pole. So here's the fiber conduit route, which will go along the existing fence line out to Jesse Street and into an underground fiber vault. So all this will be underground, be about a 2-foot trench going in this location. So on Jesse Street, I just want to point out that you will not be able to see the vault. It'll be underground. Here's a photo simulation of the existing view. So you can see there's fence, there is the monopine, and you can see the antennas at this level. These are the existing antennas, and with the new dish antennas, they'll be in exactly the same location as these antennas. So it will be very much the same view that you see there today. And I want to point out that we did get some comments about the concealment element of this project and the antennas and support equipment. We put a special condition of approval on here to address that. And here it is. The antennas and support equipment shall be completely sealed and integrated into the stealth monopine. We're requesting that they replace any missing or discolored foliage, and that the monopine be maintained in good condition throughout time. Did have a radio frequency study for this project. Proposed antennas would be compliant with all FCC radio frequency rules, and no public safety limits would be exceeded at ground level or at the adjacent properties, as I'll show you. So here's the monopine. The antennas are at the 32-foot level. As you've seen on previous projects, the yellow represents the occupational limit. So this is where the occupational limit will exceed the FCC requirements. Beyond that, it does not exceed it. So this is about 18 feet, and then for 41 feet in this direction or in both directions, or actually 3 directions, this would be the public limit. where the public limit is exceeded. Beyond that, in the white areas, the public limit is totally within FCC guideline requirements. Here's a site view. Again, we have the 18-foot occupational limit going out from the monopine, and then the 41 foot limit going out for the public limit. I wanted to show you how that translates into the site plan. So here's the monopine. And as you can see, it will not really go beyond the property lines. It will go above one of these tanks, adjacent tanks, but there won't be any radio frequency emissions going on to any residential property that exceed FCC limits. So we do have some special conditions for the radio frequency conditions, and that is that post-installation RF coverage report is required within 30 days to ensure that the RF emissions exactly align with what I just showed you. Occupational personnel are to be trained in RF safety and equipped with personal protective equipment if they're working anywhere near the antennas. And appropriate RF alerting signage must be displayed just like on all wireless projects that you've seen in the past. So with that, staff is recommending that you approve use permit 240020 with the recommended findings, conditions of approval, and open for any questions at this point. So thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Questions of staff?
Jerry, is this site active now or is it deactivated?
Yes, this site is active. As you can see, there are some existing antennas in this location. I believe the antennas at the location where Dish Wireless will be replacing them are not active right now. So these are active, these ones are not active.
And I'm just curious, and I'm picking up a new nomenclature with the dish antenna. Are we just looking at the same type of planar array antenna that are used with most cell towers, or is this a different type of equipment than we've approved before?
No, this is pretty typical. It will be your typical 5G equipment that we've seen for numerous projects up to this point.
Thanks, Bob. Mike?
Wait till comments.
I do have a few questions. These might be Levi questions too. So this equipment appears from photographs to be up in the trees, although there may be some distance from the foliage of the pine trees and that around it. Does the fire department review these applications?
They do. So the fire department reviews all of our building permit applications. So they will see this as when it comes through for building permits.
Okay, so my question is, does somebody review equipment?
Like the
In terms of
distance from
proximity
the
to-
branches to trees.
Yeah,
It's a good question. I don't know. They'd be reviewing it in plan view. Obviously, there's a final inspection that is also carried out at the end of construction. So to your point, I don't believe anyone from fire would be, looking at that specifically at the time of issuance of building permits. Could be an appropriate condition to apply for prior to final inspection of the permit to coordinate with our city forester
okay,
to ensure adequate distance. But that's a good point.
okay. Most of the time, these ones are on buildings, so this
Yeah.
photograph looks like it's sort of up.
There's definitely existing vegetation in the
And then there
proximity.
were several letters to the city from neighbors, especially on Jesse Street, I think. And I'd like to go down just a few of their questions, just to.
Sure.
One of them mentioned the vault. It seems like the vault is entirely underground, so I think that answers that.
It's my understanding, but we also should have the applicant online as available as well, who can answer that question probably more specifically, but that is my understanding as well.
And then there was one of the letters mentioned that this trench that there was no easement for the for the trench from the monopole to the equipment vault. I'm not sure why they would need an easement. It's all on the Callahan property.
Yeah, I believe it's all covered under the lease area of the Callahan property. Obviously, once you extend into the right of way, there will be a utility easement at that point in time for where they're connecting into that fiber line. But the applicant can probably speak more specifically as to what is captured under the lease area as well. So,
Okay. So finally, there's a whole list on one of these letters from the neighbors that one of the main complaints is that there was sort of mitigation measures approved on previous projects that were never implemented. And for instance, tower panels have not been covered with SOx as required by permits. New equipment in the tower has not been painted out to blend in the environment. The abandoned equipment was not removed in a timely manner. And then the landscaping, the trees they planted were dying. And has anybody from the staff actually sort of point by point looked at these complaints and tried to figure out what's going on?
yeah, so these concerns were brought to the planning office's attention yesterday, and then the letters were submitted to the commission today. So those comments were obviously received after publication of the staff report. So there's no additional conditions that speak to any of those comments presently in the agenda report or the draft resolution. We have looked at the previous approvals, and there was a previous architectural review committee approval that did approve this original facility and did require landscaping. That was in, I believe, the original use permit for this site was in 2001. So it's been some time since the original approvals were made. It does appear that some of the landscaping that was required at that time has died off. And it is within the purview of this commission if they wish to apply additional conditions to require additional landscape screening at this time. And as it pertains to this request, staff will be obviously performing a final inspection of the building permit to confirm whether or not those conditions are met prior to finaling that permit.
So regarding things like the SOx, a SOC is some sort of a material that's placed over the equipment on the pole?
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Yeah.
sort of a fabric or and so how did, I mean, I guess my question is what sort of, even though that isn't part of this application, that's the problem, but what, just in general, because they do talk about in this letter about trying to give some assurance to the neighbors that conditions aren't placed on projects that are just ignored in the future, and that, you know, like regarding the SOx and the painting, what's kind of enforcement? What powers does the city have to make sure these things happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the conditions that are applied to projects such as this that are approved with conditions, the properties are required to maintain compliance with those conditions. So you know, they're enforced in the exact same way that code enforcement would enforce upon any of the requirements that are in the city code. Obviously, just like our code enforcement, the primary tool in addressing code violations is in the form of a complaint. So in the future, if this facility was out of compliance of conditions of approval, the property owners could contact the city, notify them of the non-compliance, and then that would basically start a code enforcement process upon that facility. Sure.
Yeah, and I can point out, if you can see the photo simulation, we did look at those and we made sure that the antennas are encased, so they're not exposed antennas, and they are painted to be a green, just like the foliage. So that's something that did look for. So that.
Also note that while the facility is a shared facility, so the applicant before you today will be limited on what they're able to do to existing antennas on the tower. However, if there are areas of non-compliance with the existing antennas, if those are pointed out and those do appear to be in violation of conditions of approval for the facility, staff can address that with the applicant and the operator of that equipment.
Jerry, I have a question. All these antennas, are they color masked to match the foliage?
That's
According to again, the photo simulation, that's what we're seeing. So that's what we checked on that. But as Levi pointed out, the upper antennas are a different applicant. It's not part of this application. So that would be a code enforcement action if we found these to be not in compliance, but the new ones would definitely have to be in compliance.
But it looks like one of the antennae is slightly different color. That's why I asked.
Yeah, maybe this one. So we can look into that as a code enforcement action if that's necessary.
Levi, question for you. The issue regarding additional landscape screening, without having a planting plan to review, would it be within our ability to request that and continue this? Or if that were a condition that we would put on this, or would this be something more like a visit by the city forester and to have that person make on-site field recommendations? How would we best approach this?
I think the second of those two options would be the most appropriate. As you're all aware, with these types of requests, there's pretty specific timeframes established by our federal government and the processing of these requests. So continuances are usually discouraged for wireless facilities requests. So if the commission did want to place a condition on the application to have additional landscaping, it would be staff's recommendation to be very specific and clear as to what you would want to see in that landscaping. And then I do think it's a great idea to have the city forester also provide input as to what's the most appropriate type of planting, spacing of planting to ensure the health of the trees over the long term. Might have been something that was overlooked with the additional approval or the original approval, and maybe why those trees didn't.
The only landscaping expert that's on the planning commission is not with us tonight. And so I don't think the four of us would be able to be very specific.
I think when I say specific, I would mean specifically articulate your intent of the condition to a point in where staff can adequately confirm whether or not that condition is satisfied.
Are we getting into comments?
We might be getting to adding to this.
Yeah. Let's hear from the public first.
Yeah, right now I'm still just answering staff questions, so I don't think we've strayed from that. So,
okay, is there anyone from the audience like to come up and entertain us?
I'll do my best. I am Kerry Convoy, 618 Jesse Street. Lori and I have been living across the street from the tower for 20 years, and we've learned a couple of things. And one of the things we've learned is the importance of paying attention to precedents that you're setting. When you allow something that seems sort of innocuous, it can grow into a larger problem. And when we looked at this application, we've worked with the city pretty successfully so far on this site and managed it pretty well. But there's a couple of things that worried us about this applicant, particularly that we've moved most of the construction, actually all of the construction, off of Jesse Street. This was an issue when the pole first went in. Jesse Street is a narrow dead end. Construction up there is difficult for the neighborhoods. We're looking at this and it seems like we're moving construction back to the Jesse Street side. But maybe the most concerning thing is the vault. As sort of innocuous as that sounds, it's going to be underground and invisible. We're just beginning to roll out 5G, and the pressure on this site to accommodate that is going to grow. So we're looking at the precedent of growing the footprint of the technology outside the perimeter, the footprint of the site, outside the fence. That's a concern for us because while I'm sure vault doesn't really qualify as equipment, it's a piece of supporting technology that they need in order to do this. And we would like to see the same way the site has been designated as not a preferred site, and we're going to say we're not going to put any more poles in that site. We're not going to grow the pole that's there any higher. We'd like to say that we can't put things outside the fence. If you're going to grow the technology, if you're going to expand the use of the site, you can do it, but you can't put stuff outside the fence. And I think that's my biggest concern. I think Lori wrote the piece that she submitted to you guys, and that's much more detailed and has more history in it. And I refer to that for any more detail. But I think our primary concern right now is this kind of creep, which feels like this kind of project creep. We're now going to put something outside the fence. Right now, it's invisible. A year from now or 2 years from now, other providers may want to expand that, and they may be able to say that you allowed this, now you have to allow us to do this, to put in a larger vault, an above ground vault, because we need that. That's it. Thank you so much. Oh, Lori and I are always available for questions, comments, observations, and our contact information. I'm not sure that was entirely entertaining, but thank you.
Thank you. Any more? Please.
Hi, I'm Lori.
Go, Lori.
Thank you for considering all of our comments and actually reading our letter. Appreciate that. We are directly across from the tower, so I can look out my kitchen window and that's what I see in the morning. And
Your name, please?
Lori Putnam, yeah, on Jesse Street. And so from our perspective, as you heard in the staff report, this is a significant change from what was originally approved in 2001. And it has even been referred to as a new facility. So even though the FCC requires you to automatically approve modifications to an existing tower, from our perspective, this is a whole new ballgame. And it sets the stage for further expansion of the site, and it goes beyond what was originally approved in 2001, which was approved at the time the city had really no guidelines for cell towers and didn't know what was okay, what was not okay, what the implications were going to be. And so we request that you look at this from the perspective of a new facility, compare it to the current city code, and you will obviously see that this is not a preferred location. Residential areas are disfavored, and this is not the best place for this kind of equipment, this kind of expansion, which is probably going to go on and on in the future. And I also, since you already addressed a few of my comments in the letter, just regarding the landscaping, I understand how the process is supposed to work, where the city forester might come out, look at the site, recommend some landscaping. We actually had that happen at the request of the ARC in 2014, and a plan was put in place. The applicant ignored it for more than 6 years, and it took the residents' persistence to come back again and again and again and bring out code enforcement and say, you guys got to do this. And finally, they did do some planting, planted some oak trees that are, I'm going to be dead by the time those oak trees grow enough to screen that site. So we need to go back and look at the landscaping again and the screening again and the camouflage of the site, because it is completely visible from our residences. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more? No. Are any hands raised? Oh, we do have somebody.
Hi, I'm Tip Weiss, and I'm at 649 Jesse, which is probably one of the closer properties to the location of the Plano Pine. When I look out my front door, I look up, all I see is the tree. It's about 75 feet to my fence, I believe. So we're right next to it. We are, even though health is not a concern or a reason to, deny what's going on here, we're highly concerned about the RF frequencies. And I was assured by Levi that we would be able to see the RF report, which I appreciate. I'd also request that the RF report be, or RF be checked periodically beyond that, maybe as a 6 month, 1 year kind of a condition. My wife and daughter both suffer from severe migraines and tinnitus, and we don't know what it's from, but when you look out your kitchen window, your bedroom window, your living room window and, you see this tree right there with a giant antenna on it facing you. It's a little disconcerting. It is ugly eyesore. It's visible from pretty much every room in my house. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Gary Davis. I live at 628 Jesse Street, also right across the street from the Calam property. And I bought my house in 2001, just when all this was starting, and have witnessed indeed the continued, what can we say, industrialization of the site. One of the things that we seem to have gotten an agreement on earlier is that most of the access to the site and the construction, et cetera, would be done via the Divisadero Gate, which is much more accessible place than the dead end up against the DLI fence, which is what Jesse Street is. And I just have one simple or two simple comments. Why, if they're going to have to put a vault in, can't it be done on that side over of the property, over on the Divisadero Street side, where it's easily accessed? There's a big gate and there's a paved parking area inside. Why not put it there? Why does it have to be, once again, out on Jesse Street, which is, you should see the garbage trucks trying to come up and service us. It's a narrow, difficult street to get in and out of. And we have had in the past episodes of considerable truck traffic up there for access to the Calam site. So please, I mean, at the very least, let's have another look at this to see whether or not, if they really have to have this vault and this other equipment, run it out to the other direction where it's more accessible and less of a problem for the neighbors. Thank you very much.
Where would it start?
Well, at the tower. And then, as far as I understand from the site plan, I don't think the distance is any greater from the, I don't know that, sorry, from the tower out to Divisadero. I don't have access to that plan. I don't know.
Thank you.
It may be a little bit further, but so what?
Thank you.
I'll just note, we may have people online that want to comment, and I just want to make sure before we close the public hearing, I believe our applicants joined us as well. So we have an applicant representative who should be on.
There is a hand raised online for public comment. I can go ahead and allow Robert Evans to speak.
Okay, yeah, my question is really about the vault. And where is the fiber coming in? Is it on the poles on Divisadero, if there are, on Jesse, if it's on the poles already, or is it is it underground? So that's a question of, is there fiber on Divisadero? Why do they have to connect on Jesse, which, if they've got somebody working in the vault, you're going to have a truck parked there, and the end of Jesse is not a good place to end up with any kind of cars parked around. So I would also encourage having them access the fiber from the Divisadero side. I think unless the Jesse folks would like to have their street widened and put in curbs and gutters at the expense of the cable or of the dish people, I would strongly urge, and I think the neighborhood as a whole would urge, that it be moved to the Divisadero side. Also, we're talking about 41 feet, and one neighbor said 70 feet. I think we went through a big hoop-de-doo on getting the wireless I've lost a word I want. Anyway, the wireless ordinance, thank you. Up in Skyline, and there was not supposed to be, there's wireless things are not supposed to be within 100 feet of people's houses. So maybe this site should be abandoned and move it someplace else entirely. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Bob. I have a question for staff.
Should we complete public hearing before we get into that? Can we confirm there's no more public comments on?
So why doesn't somebody do a motion, and then I'll ask a question of the motion?
Do we have a representative?
Another
Yeah,
hand.
let's first complete public hearing and make sure we've received all public comments. And then before we close public hearing, we'll need to confirm if there's an applicant representative online as well.
Another hand went up. I can allow Norman to speak.
Fine.
Are you there, Norman?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Good afternoon, Norm McLeod, zoning manager here at Dish Wireless. Honorable Commission and Commissioners, I'd like to basically say thank you for your time, and I appreciate Jerry Hittelman's descriptions and definition of the scope of our project. The original facility approved some time ago had conditions imposed upon it for landscape and irrigation, things of that nature to help screen the existing facility. Dish Wireless is going to work with the tower company that owns the tower, which is America. I think it's Crown Castle. And that asset is owned by a third-party tower asset management company, and the responsibility goes to that provider or that tower company. Dish Wireless, being an applicant, being basically a tenant on this pole, will comply with conditions, as such, to address branching of our antennas, antenna socks, to mimic the screening of a pine needle, of course. But the other existing outlying conditions, addressing compliance with underlying conditions, that's something we would work with Crown Castle to address and to make sure that there is compliance, to ensure that there is compliance. So with that said, speaking to the fiber vault design, typically there is fiber already strung between utility poles within a community, bringing fiber to the community. I believe there's fiber being brought to the existing carrier on this pole. We have to have our own separate fiber. So that fiber is being pulled from a pole that has fiber on it. And the fiber, I believe, is running down that pole, and that vault is at the base of that utility pole that's already existing in the public right of way. The vault is typically, it could be anywhere from 1 to 3 feet rectangular to 3 to 4 feet rectangular, depending on, the proximity of the pole, things of that nature, to the actual source of the fiber. I can't get into details. I wouldn't be the one to talk to about that, but I can provide more information to give you more specifics on the design. And again, going back to the original design of the pole, it was originally sorry? Did someone say something? Nope. Yeah, back to the original design of the pole, being a 2-carrier facility, Sprint has removed their equipment, and Dish Wireless will be replacing their equipment on that very same location. So virtually the same installation. Nothing's going to grow in terms of the footprint of the facility. The only thing that will be added to the outside footprint would be that hand vault, basically to allow the fiber to be brought in from the utility pole to the facility itself. So the scale, scope, and appearance of the facility will really be unnoticeable as to what it was originally. So if there's any other questions you'd like me to answer for you, I'm here to answer them for you.
I have a quick question. Is it technically feasible to relocate the vault over towards the Divisadero side?
409. The actual source of the
fiber is a utility design, and it's pretty much dictated by the fiber provider. We can look at the map of where fiber is being fed into the location that that site is located. And then we might be able to see something that would, accommodate a redesign. But typically, we follow suit to, we have a nationwide contract, or I should say a regional contract with fiber providers in the area. And if that fiber provider has fiber at that pole, we go to where the source of the pole is. And then there's what they call like a meet me point, so to speak. That's kind of utility talk for the facility, or I should say access to that fiber at the site. We try to tie into that meet me point. So I could never give you a promise and say, yes, we can redesign this fiber feed to this property. It has to be looked at separately, and I would defer to our utility planners or people that we work with at the fiber provider side of the equation.
Thank you.
Answer your
Thank you.
Okay, here's another question for
Close it.
Mr. McLeod.
Yeah.
What if you ran the fiber onto the property and over to the Divisadero side, and then from there over to the tower?
Well, again, we probably would look at a plan to show, where the source is coming from originally, the utility plan, and then see the feasibility of, I guess you're saying, to sort of zigzag from one side to the other side and back in again to the property. I mean, I believe there's already an easement that runs parallel to the corridor to that street that we would be paralleling. So instead of encumbering the property with more easements, if you will, it's a landlord issue as well as a fiber provider issue as to the source of that utility. So several variables come into play to try and look at a design. So again, it goes back to the fiber provider, their infrastructure layout of what's existing. We try to tie into it, as simply and as easily as possible. So I guess I couldn't answer that question for you. I'm trying to give you the variables that we deal with, and that is the landlord, the fiber provider, and themselves, and the feasibility of bringing it in from another source, from a different side of the street or an alternate side of the property.
So a question for Jerry. Is this a 150-day shot clock?
Yes, in our opinion, because of the excavation that occurs in the right of way and so forth, that would be a 150-day shot clock.
How many days do we have left?
I believe it's till August, so 23rd potentially. So I'll tell you exactly how many days that is.
Jerry, on this issue, under 6409, can we rescope the project?
Well, in our opinion, it would not be a 6409 because it is of that excavation of that fiber line going outside of the lease area and the 20-foot limit for excavation to go beyond the project site.
Yeah, and I can probably provide some additional clarification. I think where this question's coming from is based on the title, and this original application did come in as under a 6409 request, as requested by the applicant. As Jerry pointed out, upon review, it's staff's interpretation that due to the expansion of the work, it is being reviewed under a new facility request. I will say that was a cautious interpretation, given the extent of the proposed scope of work that is beyond the facility. It's about as close as it would get to be. It's right on the line as far as whether or not staff thinks it's 6409 eligible or a new facility. But I think it could be argued either way, given the extent of the expansion out of the existing footprint is for a utility connection, which is rather common for wireless facilities. But we are processing this as a new facility request.
And in the past, we've had projects that were split into a new and a 6409. I didn't see this termed that way.
That's correct. We approached it since it was made as a part of the application, the applicant did not split the two requests. It's being reviewed under 60 or under a new facility request process. And because of the timing, the applicant has agreed to that process. Going back to your question, Chair Dawson, about how long do we have, as Jerry pointed out, let's see, I think we have it in as it's August is the timeframe, but we always like to make sure we have enough time to get through our entire process if we ended up in an appeal process.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And also note that there's fewer council meetings in the month of July. So the month that separates us from that deadline, there's also going to be fewer opportunities for hearings to happen.
Well, the reason I asked about that is that we could solve a few problems by just trenching across the site and back, so that we don't have truck backups on Jesse, and we're using Divisadero the way it probably ought to be used.
Would you do that as a condition?
Good question.
Yes, that's the question. Do we have that option available to us where we can make that type of engineering level request? I think it would be having them to redesign or potentially go back and look at even if they can redesign that plan.
Yeah, I think that's the question. I think it was asked to the applicant whether or not how feasible that option was, and the applicant didn't actually have the information to answer that question today. So it's difficult for staff to answer how effective that condition would be if placed on this project. So yeah, it's hard to say how effective that would be or where that would land us.
We could certainly phrase such a potential condition as the applicant shall make a good faith effort to coordinate with the fiber provider to assess the feasibility of this relocation.
I think it could also be helpful if the commission was inclined to do so, to kind of adding on to that condition to have an existing utilities plan submitted to the city that we can confirm whether or not fiber exists in the Divisadero side of the site. I think that's what's kind of driving this conversation, is whether or not the option to connect the fiber vault on the Divisadero side is even an option based on where fiber is available.
The thing is that the fiber is so not lossy, so it'll go for blocks and not even know the difference. So that engineering wise, this should be an easy thing to do. So
whether or not the fiber is on which street it's on, you can still have the vault over on the
right,
Divisadero side.
put in another vault.
So if it's going to be a simple
Are we out of
question, can we go ahead and
Are we still in the public?
Well, it would
hearing?
depend if we have additional questions for the applicant at this point.
yeah,
And
I'm
if
curious
we-
whether we could just table it and have them come back to us, whether it's possible to do it on the Divisadero side at all. So come back in 2 weeks and give us an answer.
Well, before setting a strict time frame, I think we'd like to hear from the applicant to make sure that that's a doable task within that time frame. So yeah, if we want to.
Yeah, thank you for letting me chime back in on this. And I would rather come back to the table with more information before you start to begin, additional conditions of approval, if you will, because the condition of approval to redesign all that. Yes, I definitely want to come back to the commission with more solid opportunities for considerations if fiber is going to be available off of Divisadero Street, and is that compatible with the property that we're working with? Again, I don't have those answers for you, and I do appreciate the commission's patience to allow us to come back some more solid information, make a solid recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. McLeod.
Thank you.
So our next planning commission meeting would be scheduled for May 28th. If we were to continue to a date certain of May 28th, we would not have to renotice. Yeah, that would be the next option for a meeting date. Beyond that, we'd be in June, so that would be the June 11th Planning Commission. So I'll defer to the commission.
And that would that be a problem for our shot clock? That's August.
I think if we ended up back at, if we were to continue to a date certain to the May 28th Planning Commission, and if that timeframe worked for the applicant, then I think we would be in good shape as far as the shot clock's
Pretty
concerned.
short leash on the appeal, isn't it? 3-day appeal.
It's a 3-day appeal, that's correct.
So what do we have to do now to get this done?
So if you were inclined to continue the item to a date certain, you would just make a motion and then vote on that to continue to that specific date. Again, that date would be May 28th would be the next available date. I would ask that we confirm with the applicant specifically on that date that they would be able to turn around with the appropriate information, submit that to staff, because we obviously like to publish our staff reports ahead of
And have
time.
Staff review in time.
Correct. So that is a pretty quick turnaround. So they would have to kind of respond within a week's time with that information.
Okay, so
So made.
Yeah, I believe we can adhere to that duration and give us a week and we'll get you an answer on the feasibility of rerouting fiber and the like to get this moving forward at the earliest possible opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to do this with the commission. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully the vault could just be moved towards that's the goal, right? Is to have the vault on the Divisadero site.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
okay, cool. Motion, I'll second the motion.
And just to
For- for the
clarify, that
date.
motion is to continue this item to the May 28th Planning Commission meeting.
Excellent.
We have a motion and a second.
And Levi, it might be worth trying to find out what the details were for the ARC landscaping plan
Sure.
that came up decade ago, I guess. So,
Yeah, we can come with that
That's on the
information.
plan then.
yeah, that would be, then we can see about what implementation is going to be required. Now, I'm not sure. I mean, there's so many different corporations involved in this particular project. If what we're doing here is going to be something that can be addressed to this particular project per se, but it could also be that an enforcement issue that you had brought up, we can at least make sure that the community is aware that we're looking into making sure that that particular landscaping activity is occurring as it should have.
Sure. And yeah, this is the perfect time to do that. The applicants indicated they intend on working with the owner of the facility to bring the facility into compliance. So I think this is the
Before
appropriate
we
time.
close it, a lot of these issues came up in the initial study.
We haven't
I
voted.
understand that. I don't want to talk about it. That's why I asked before we close it.
Okay. Oh. We
So
don't-
we've already heard from an applicant representative. But I don't believe we formally closed the public hearing at this time. So if the chair and commission wish to,
I can open it up.
I think we're still
and
open.
We haven't
They
closed
will
it.
have to take
Yeah.
all comers.
So.
So I don't think there's anybody out there who's going to earn us. We have-
Good afternoon. My name's Daniel Pierce. I'm the permitting manager for our West Area team at Crown Castle. I just wanted to introduce myself, make myself a resource for you guys. We're talking about owner operator of the facility in addition to the applicant Dish. So as we go through these conditions of approval with the landscaping, we will be available to answer those questions. And you can reach out to myself, Daniel Pierce, with those questions. So I'm here, so I wanted to introduce myself, make sure it's
It's good to
on record.
put a face by the name.
Of course, yes. I live in Sunnyvale, California, not too far from here. So I'm boots on the ground in the area. So just wanted to introduce myself and thank you guys for giving me your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick comment before the next hearing, if that's where we're heading. Is there any advantage in getting the city forester to work with the applicant so that there is actually something for us to evaluate as opposed to just leaving it as an open-ended potential condition?
I know we could ask the forester to do exactly that, but the question is how that would be received out the other end.
Staff,
Basically staff sort of information.
It is, yeah.
yeah, staff is happy to coordinate with the other city departments prior to the next hearing to answer as many of the questions we heard tonight that as possible.
Okay. So let's have a roll call on
No.
the, oh, no,
We're not done yet.
we're not done?
You want to take a vote, but I can make my comments?
We have to close the public hearing first.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we can close the public hearing and then we also have a motion and a second on the table.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No one else wants to speak because I have the public open here. Okay, thank you very much.
There's no hands raised online.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We anticipated a lot of these problems when we did the study sessions, the ad infinitum study session. The color issues, that was one of the topics under discussion. One of the difficulties is that it appears that because you different multiple color, multiple companies, if you're up on top of a hotel with your cell repeaters, it's easy to require they be the same color as the paint. But when we get on a tree, you got multiple companies with some different colors. And then particularly these monopines, their colors change.
Yeah,
I've seen a
they
bright blue
fade, yeah.
over a period of time because no one wants to go down to the site to do anything until it's a 6409 replacement time, trying to maintain staff and focus. So we talked about these things. We knew that we were going to run into these kind of problems. Some of the problems we can't cure. We can't require them to test on a periodic basis. The federal government does not allow us to do that. It would be at the local cost. We cannot tell them what to do on their replacements. That is their purview. And once again, the federal government doesn't allow us. So we're tried during the study sessions to address these issues and see how we come up with answers. We came up with a lot of them, but we also knew that periodically we would have to make changes. We've already made substantial changes from the very first. And it seems like the periodic review or complaints on color of whatever the site is, not just a monopine, but any color, that might be one of them. When you run into the 6409, which is replacement of equipment, you're really stuck because as you heard us discuss, you have time limits that you have to do, or they can come in and just do what they want to do. So we have to pay by them. And I appreciate living across from these areas because I've looked at all these things now for a number of years. But you heard the frustration, I think, out on the commission here, that we cannot do a lot. We try to work with our public as much as we can. But I think we need to put on a list to see if we can, what our ordinance says on requiring replacement of colors. When the foliage no longer covers the transmitters, because sometimes storms will wear off one side of the foliage because it's rubbing against the transmitter. And so it loses it. So we need to make sure we have in place there a trouble file on these issues that we need to address in any future changes to the ordinance. Anything else anybody think of based on this discussion? Because it was a great discussion.
So can we have our vote now?
We can have our vote now.
Cool.
Chair Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Booth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa,
Yes.
and Commissioner Silva.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with a vote of 5.
So we have some news from the council.
Yes, so for planning office update, in addition, as noted in the staff report, Just follow up to the recent city council meetings. They did have the second reading for the ordinance to amend chapters 22 and 38 of the Monterey City Code. Of course, as this commission knows, that was to establish the exemption criteria and the minimum performance standards relating to emergency generator use during emergency power outages. That was adopted on second reading, and that will go into effect on May 16th. Additionally, at the last council meeting, they adopted the 2024-2025 annual action plan for community development block grant funds and authorized the submittal to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And prior to tonight, there was no tentative item scheduled for May 28th, but now there is.
Now there is. Aha.
And that's all we have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any comments?
I have a question. We've talked in the past about getting some orientation on findings. What we can do, what we can't do on findings. Are working on that?
Yes, I'm working with the city attorney's office to schedule a time for us to do both Brown Act training and also cover kind of a Commissioner's 101 as it relates to findings and that kind of thing.
Thank you.
And when to recuse yourself. Just kidding.
So Leo, I have a question. I mean, follow back up on our discussion about view issues. I'd like to look at what we can do on the Planning Commission to start the process of working with staff to have something a little bit more definitive on that issue. And I'm not sure whether it could be like a CIP type thing. And I know you guys are busy with RAP and the issues that we need to address then, but at some point in the future, I'd like to be able to see if we can, as a planning commission, look at how we might be able to advise city council to revise their code on, or city code on, view issues.
View sheds.
Yeah, and to have something a little bit more quantitative. So city residents and people who want to go ahead and make some type of modification, second story, whatever it might be, could be more easily addressed in the subjective process that ARC uses now.
Yeah. So I'll weigh in on that without getting too into it, since it's not an agendized matter. But as this commission knows, the state is requiring cities to move more and more into objective design standards and how they review projects. And I think this is a great example of where you have a very subjective finding that is made as it relates to views. I believe the language in the finding is unreasonably impair a view. That's pretty as subjective as it gets. So I think you're right on to what we're going to be required to do. There's multiple programs within our housing element to make modifications to adopt citywide objective design standards. And I think if that will obviously be a public process that will involve community engagement as well as input from this commission and our architectural review committee. And I think in that process, what you're going to see is if view shed is something that the city wants to regulate on, it'll have to be in an objective, quantitative way. So I think you're on the right track.
Just following up on that, Levi, doesn't the Housing Accountability Act already require local jurisdictions to apply objective standards for any housing project?
It's dependent on how the project comes in. If they apply under certain state laws, you're correct. That is the case. But it's on the applicant to submit and go through the proper process. So I think what you're referring to is maybe like an SB 330 type application, which has its own requirements to go through. But you're correct. There are certain instances where state law already requires projects to be reviewed only under objective design standards. SB 35 is another one.
Certain
like
types
that.
of projects.
Correct. And we do have adopted objective design standards for some of our specific plan areas, but they're not citywide, and that's where we need to move.
How long is that process anticipated to take?
So we're still working through. We're expecting to have an intent to certify the housing element by the state prior to our June 18th hearing. to where we're anticipating adoption. So that'll be a joint planning commission and city council meeting. So that's June 18th. So once we receive, once it's adopted and certified, objective design standards will be in our implementation phase. So it's probably within the next calendar year of that.
Okay.
So the June 18th is a fixed date,
That's correct.
a joint meeting.
It'll be a joint meeting. So that'll be the evening session. So that'll be the 7 o'clock session of the June 18th. It'll be city council joint PC.
What's going to happen to the ARC once we get objective standards? They're not going to have housing projects to review anymore.
I'm going to decline comment on that question.
Approved signs.
Bob reminded me of something today when I was looking at Erica's notes on material. Like, it comes into us and she forwards it to us. And one of the things I digressed and I went over to it, it said jobs tasking of the planning commission, and it's changed. It is not what it was under our charter. Did you check on that?
Are you referring to the duties and responsibilities of the planning commission? Yeah, I'm happy to look into that.
Because it's different than in the charter says. And that goes to what we're supposed to be doing. It's an interpretation.
Sure.
I understand, but thank you.
Yeah, of course.
That's all I have, sir.
Okay, are we done? Okay. That's all.